Divine rise. Divine rise and blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. Divine rise, blessed be to your day. Have some, have not. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. We understand the night before. We understand the night before. Dark nights of the soul. I frequently get asked the question. Yeah, we back. Allow me to come back on that live so we come back in full effect. I get frequently asked the question. Don't even be on any. To me, it's not even. But I frequently get asked the question about what do you do about family? What do you do about friendships? What do you do about. How do you address old friendships? Why do you always address your family why do you always address certain things in the past tense and stay so strong in saying things in the past tense like they're still not present? That's one of the main questions I always get asked. I get asked a lot of times when it comes to the aspects of purge and peace. I get this question asked a lot of times. People hit me in the inbox. People hit me in my inbox, emails. And they always ask me, I watched one of your lectures. I watched one of your lives. I watched one of your lectures. And every time that you speak about a person or family members or friends, you always speak about them in the past tense like they're still not present. It was very interesting to me that I got that question. Here's the truth. When you're going into this purge of yourself, when you're going into this internal purge, when you're dealing with these aspects of yourself, when you're really starting to look and you're taking that responsibility of yourself, you're taking that responsibility in your reactions, you're taking the responsibility in how you used to react, how you used to move, everything, you're starting to go really deep. You're getting real deep into your shadow work. Closure. I said this in a lecture. Closure is a trap. Closure doesn't do anything. Closure doesn't serve a purpose. Closure doesn't do anything. So that made me think about Purge and Peace. It made me think about that purging and peace. A lot of people always ask me, I'm going to repeat the question again. A lot of people always ask me the question, how can you really write off your karmic, what is technically my karmic family? How can you write off what were trauma bonds? How can you just write these things off? And I always say, LLC mentality, ownership mentality. The way that I write off, the way that I'm able to write off so many aspects of my past, the past cycles, because I always can say thank you for the lessons. For everybody that's come into my life, everybody that's come into that spectrum, as me coming into my growth, me doing my internal work, me coming in and further going into the depths of what I am, it's always getting to a point to be able to say thank you for the lesson. It's always going to go into thank you for the lesson. A lot of times when we're purging and we're coming into our peace, one of the things that we try to do is try to bring other things in that equated to what we thought was peace. There's a difference between the stagnant and the complacency and you coming into your peace. When you're doing this purge, when you're purging, when you're doing your internal work, when you're facing these shadows, when you're facing the shadows, when we're doing that opening meditation and we say, okay, cool, let's let the noise in. And then followed by, we're going to talk about these aspects and bring them to the surface and bring them in order. And then we end with that meditation. And all right, cool. The lessons that you've learned, the questions that you have, ask yourself those questions as you're going into this ending meditation. It's all about purging. It's all about purging to your peace. I don't care what it is. And this is one of the hardest things. This is one of the hardest things for a lot of us when we're coming into ourselves, when we're allowing ourselves, we're not allowing our love for ourselves, that energy that we're creating for ourselves, the story that we're owning of ourselves, to be no longer dictated by the things that are outside of us, that were based on our complacency and our comfort. There's a difference between your peace. When you're at peace, even the things that trigger you, you can look at and you can assess. Whenever you're in a state of complacency or you're stuck in that state of being stagnant, you'll always end up, every time something triggers you, you're going to want to react. You're going to want to say something. You're not, remember that reaction. You're waiting to react. You're waiting for that emotional cue to have you staying in that space, that behavior. When you're at true peace, that's when you actually can do that true assessment. When you're at true peace, you truly can do the assessments as necessary. I'll give you a story. I remember back in the day when it came to trips, taking trips, going places and all of these things, I used to be that individual that be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna pay for this person since I know they don't have it. But it was all based on this. It was based on the avoidance wounds. It was based on the avoidant wounds. Until one time I got to a point with myself where when I was in, like, if I say, okay, cool, we go in summertime fly, we going to Miami, we go in summertime fly, we going to Puerto Rico, we going somewhere this summer. I noticed that the reason people could come into my space, as this example, the reason people can come into my space and manipulate the space, manipulate me into feeling guilt or feeling insecurity or feeling any of these types of ways, was not because they were some type of bad person. It's because it was already present. It was already present in the space. We're going to get deep into this when we get into depreciated interest tomorrow. But when you're going into this space with yourself, you're having these thoughts for yourself, you're building for yourself, you're building into yourself. A lot of the plans that we used to create that we're looking at now, a lot of the plans that we used to create with ourselves, they were based on reaction. So you might have that chance. Okay, cool, I'm about to go on a trip. Everybody goes on a trip. Remember, the unseen creates your space. The things that you allowed to create your space that you're not dealing with create your space. So I remember going on these trips earlier on, and I'd be like, all right, cool, we all going here. It's going to cost this much. All right, we're going to break it down this many ways, and this, and this. I was expecting others to think as me. This is one example of thinking others were going to think like me. So for me, when it comes to a trip, when it comes to me going somewhere, no matter how much the trip is, if it's going to be split between 5, 6, 2, how many ever people, I always made sure that I had at least, sometimes I made sure I had at least half, or if not the whole amount, to myself for the trip before I took the trip. In my mind, one or two of my friends, they'd be like, all right, yeah, we all got that same mindset. So it would always be what we would say to ourselves and trying to place blame on something else. And it's just deep how you start looking at these things when you're doing your reflection. We always had that one homeboy. We always had that one homegirl. We always had somebody that they would say they want to do it. They would say they're on the ball, but then they would end up at the last minute not having what they needed, they didn't have their shit in order. But it wasn't just to that point that I wanted to address. it wasn't up to that point because we knew first and foremost, we knew that they weren't going to have it when they started it. We knew their timeline. We knew how it was. But always at the end, because of our behavior, not really thinking about it, not really able to set that tone, we would sit there in that space and be like, all right, cool. Well, I'm not paying, or I'm not paying. Or I'd be like, all right, cool, we're going to break it 3 ways, they're going to pay us back. Never get paid back, or they pay half of half back. And we always get upset. Until one time, we were going to, where are we going on this trip? This is our first trip going to Jamaica. Like, cool, we're going to Jamaica. Everybody set up. Everybody was like, yo, it costs this much to do this. Costs this much to do this. One person came in. That one friend came in like, yeah, I'm down with y'all. Da 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 da. I'll have my money when it's time to drop everything down. We got everything done. Throughout the trip, these red flags came up. They didn't have their money till the week of the trip, the week to the last week to make that booking, to get everything lined up. So we had everything ready. They didn't have it then. They said they'll have it afterwards. They only had half of it afterwards. Let it pass by. All the way up to the trip. Now this trip was different because I set in my mind, this is the power of your mind when you're telling yourself what you're going to do. I set in my mind like, yo, I'm not paying for anybody extra. Though that I have it, I'm not paying for anybody extra. I was like, yo, that's going to be the move. We're not going to do it. So came to the trip. Everybody's at the airport. They show up. They're up there early. I don't know why they're early. They're there early. We're like, all right, cool. We all sitting there. I got the plane ticket in my hand for the person. They got their hotel slips and itineraries for that person. Everybody has their stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. We getting up to the baggage claim. Everybody about to walk through. I was like, well, wait. All right, everybody pull out their tickets. For you pull out your money. They didn't have the money. They were like, yo, my check didn't hit yet. It'll hit while we're there. I was like, no, I'm not taking that risk. When it comes to you doing this peace, purging and doing this peace, you're no longer taking that risk. You're no longer going to be taking that risk. You're no longer going to be putting yourself into a position where the emotions will drive the situation. I could have allowed my emotions to drive that situation, got upset, got mad. Then my emotions, then I would have been angry on the plane. I would have been angry on the plane, angry this entire time, angry on the plane, angry when I got to the hotel, angry when I got to all these places I needed to get to, angry the entire time. And then in that space, what I was telling myself when these things would happen, when we tell ourselves, okay, we're not going to do this, we tell ourselves this, you're not just speaking to simply yourself. You're speaking to every cell in your body. You're speaking to every cell in your body. You're speaking to every cell in your body. You're speaking, that's how deep your conversation is with yourself. When you're managing your emotions, you're speaking to everything inside of yourself. So if I'm sitting here upset at this person, and then I get on this plane, I'm going to notice everything that's still on that same frequency. This is what I mean by that purge and peace. If I'm doing my internal work, if I'm addressing my story, if I'm doing this work, if you're doing your purge, you coming into yourself, you tapping in, you really doing your lessons, you really doing the aspects what you need to do, and you understand the depth of that ownership, and you going into these spaces, and now you're an example. So now you can observe the space, and you sitting there every time. Now they still ain't getting on hip on the game. They still asking questions, but they're not accepting the answers. They still doing this same shit. They're not meant to be in your space. They're giving you the exact answer that you need. You can have love for them. I'm not saying that you're gonna fall out of love with you because you grow bonds with them. What I'm saying is, when you're doing this purge, you're learning how to separate yourself, and you're learning what you're separating from. Thank you for the lesson. I got the lesson. I've learned that lesson. I've mastered that lesson. I no longer have to subscribe to that lesson. Because ultimately, that's what everything in your karmic, that's what everything down here is. It is a lesson. It is a lesson in how to get your emotions in order. It's a lesson in you becoming vulnerable. It's a lesson about that aspect of your life that you haven't dealt with yet. Everything down here is a lesson. If I wanted to stay comfortable and complacent and continue externalizing everything, projecting on everything, feeling some type of way, blaming everything, then of course I'm going to stay in that space. Because that's what you do whenever you say, well, that was family and I love my family. Okay. But there's a difference between enabling and actually helping. Remember that space that's created, that's what brings forth your growth. That space that you're creating, that's what gives you the growth. That's what helps you optimize your opportunities. Instead of you sitting inside of that space and you're waiting and you're hoping that they give you something that you've now learned to give to yourself. One of the biggest things when it comes to the family aspects, when we get into sessions and we start getting into those family, the trauma wounds from the family aspects. It's allowing yourself to see both sides, because some of us had those. But what about the good memories? You had those good memories, and you also had negative memories. One of the biggest things that I ask in a lot of sessions is, I want one of the first list is, what were the good attributes of your mother? What were the good attributes of your mother? And what were some of the bad attributes of your mother? And what were the bad attributes of your mother? Your father, and what some of the good attributes? Go through the list. I remember doing that for myself in some of my first reflections, and I remember it was so hard to write out the list for the good things sometimes, and then sometimes it was so hard to write out the bad things. And then when I really was getting deeper into the purging of the whys, I started realizing that I held this person in such a regard, whether it was negative or positive. Some of the negative things that I was holding over my father at that point in time, they were based on something surface level. Some of the good things that I was holding to my mother into that accordance, they were on the surface level. As I really started assessing myself, then I started seeing the patterns and the corresponding patterns within my life. How I valued what I was valuing, what I was bringing into my space. Why was I bringing it there? The whys. I was really getting the answer to my whys. I was really realizing that a lot of the relationships that I was in at that point in time and had an opportunity to be within, a lot of the reasons that they failed was because I was always looking at an external value. I was always looking at something that I had not yet defined inside of myself. I was always looking for this aspect of love, but it was rather in the aspects of lust because it was ego-based. Because I was looking for something that I did not yet give to myself. Remember, you create that seed. You create the seed. The aspects that are going to sit within those seeds are the next line of lessons. That's why that purge and peace is so important. That's why understanding these correspondences is so important. That's why emotional literacy is so important. It's easy to remain stagnant and complacent and keep getting what you're getting. It's easy. It's easy to blame everything that's within that space you halfway there, to blame everything inside of that space on your stagnancy and your complacency. It's easy. But it's the ultimate honesty of you saying there's a reason that I keep these things around me, to keep me in this space, to keep me behaving the way that I'm behaving. What wound do I have to acknowledge? I keep saying that I want peace and I want comfort. I want peace. I want peace. I want quietness. I want something to expand beyond. But if everything in my space isn't on that frequency, it's time for me to say thank you for the lesson. It's time to start thanking them for the lessons. It's time to understand that as you shift, while you're shifting, everything else is already in place. When you admit that you once used to be a manipulative person, you are manipulative when you fully accept that, I used to be very manipulative. It may not have been by the definition that I seen somebody else do, but I know how I was manipulative. Now I know, now it's time for me to fix it. Now it's time for me to deal with it. It's when we're avoiding those aspects that we take our peace out of play. Going back to that story, ended off with that story, when they came back, when we all came back from our trip, it was like a 2-week trip. When we came back from the trip, and they were mad at us, they were mad at me for a while. My mans was mad at me for a while. Upset as hell. But there was a moment that I had within the story. Later on down the line, probably like 2-3 years later down the line, he came up, he was like, that day, that trip that we went on back in 2007, that trip that we went on and I couldn't go, and you stood there and said, you can't go, man, because you gonna be behind when you get back. We ain't doing that shit no more. That shit saved my life. That shit saved me. That put me in a different position. I was mad, I was upset, but then I started sitting with my thoughts and I was like, why am I really upset? Why am I really mad? Why am I really upset? Why am I really mad at this situation? And then I really started looking at myself. I said, thank you. I said, no problem, much gratitude, kid. You needed that lesson. They're not going to like it when you start to do your work. They're not going to like it when you start to actually heal. They're not going to like that aspect. It's cool. They're not supposed to. This work is not for everybody else. This work is for you to become the best version of you. This work is for you to become the best version of yourself. This work is for you to become that ultimate example. This work is for you not to have to come back here and repeat those lessons. I'd rather have a 5-minute conversation in saying no than a 45-minute conversation while the entire time I'm thinking, man, I shouldn't have came here. I'd rather have a 5-minute conversation saying no, giving my true honest explanation of why, than have a 45-minute stint in a space where I'm going to be irritated, angry, outside of myself. It's time to get inside of yourself. Tomorrow night, Friday nights, we do the Friday night lectures. We're getting into that depreciated interest. As you change, Here's a little sample of the key. When I was looking at the LGBTQIZ community, the alphabet community, when I was looking at transgenders, when I'm looking at a lot of this shit, when I'm looking at a lot of this stuff, I'm no longer irritated. There's no agenda in my mind about any of those aspects of those things. Because I thought about it. If I'm a God, put this thought, if I'm a God, if I'm doing the healing to become androgynous, that means I'm healing my masculine and feminine wound. The wounds created by the feminine aspects and the wounds created by the masculine aspects. And I'm becoming androgynous, and I say that I am a God. But here's that key. I haven't started doing my work, but I'm calling myself a God. And I know that I'm the only thing that can pull anything down to this space. And it becomes a reflection of where I'm at, or an example of where I'm at. Then wouldn't that be what those are? Wouldn't that be what the LGBTQIZ community is? Wouldn't that be what they are? The example of the internal conflict within yourself? The confusion that you keep putting into yourself? So if I'm still triggered by these things and I'm looking for the safety net, then maybe, just maybe, there's something I got to deal with. If I have a child, if I have a niece, if I have a nephew, my niece, my nephew, because I don't have kids, if I have my niece or my nephew in that example, and they're to see something like that, am I going to give them the same exact narrative that got me stuck to where I'm at by saying, you got to understand, son, you got to understand, nephew, there's an agenda against the black man, they're still trying to bring us down? Or am I going to speak from my healed self and be like, that's an example of internal conflict? As you change, as you evolve, everything naturally falls into the place where it's supposed to be at. It's time to stop putting ourselves outside in that external shit and getting stuck on the plate, keeping that shit going with saying it's an agenda, saying it's this, saying it's all of these things, and really understand its purpose. That's how we understand that depreciated interest. That's how we depreciate our interest in the things that have nothing to do with us. But we don't get into that on Friday. I want you to be the best. I desire you to be the best. There's only one chance to be fucking great, and you got it right now. What you gonna do with it? You always been in the right position. What you gonna do with it? I love you. We love us. Ashe.